Why is trying to order coffee in Europe the hardest thing ever as an American? Can I have a coffee with cream, no sugar?
And they gave you cream.
She starts to put whipped cream in my drink.
Admittedly, I was a confused American in Europe.
This is insane, bro.
And actually, I feel like I had a little bit of an advantage since I did do some research before traveling in that direction. Now, most of my experiences, as you guys can imagine, are going to be related to Germany. I understand Germany is not all of Europe. That's like saying New York is all of the United States, or like saying Texas is all of the United States. I can only really give you my experiences based on where I've gone. Now, the other European countries I've traveled to as well, Belgium and the Netherlands, and I've noticed some similarities between those three places, and yeah, it was pretty interesting. So if you guys hear me make references to my experiences in Europe, those are the three places I'm talking about, and I'm going to continue expanding my knowledge as I travel more and more in the future. You guys have been giving me some good recommendations, but today we're going to be checking out a lot of my fellow Americans that were also just as confused, if not more, when they traveled to Europe for the first time. Some of these people probably lived there for a few years and gave their recollections of what they experienced as far as what was different and what they weren't really comfortable with, what they appreciated more than in the United States. So we're gonna have a lot of that going on. If you guys have any experiences with us Americans out there and stuff, and you know, maybe we were confused or we had some crazy things to tell you guys, let me know in the comments down below. But if you guys are new to the channel, make sure you drop a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's go ahead and check out this first post, shall we?
Since I'm American and live in Norway, people ask me all the time if there's anything that I don't like about living in Europe. Generally, I love living in Europe for so many reasons, but there is one thing I don't like. The one thing I don't like is ice, or the lack of ice that I find in Europe.
This is a complaint I hear from so many Americans that travel to Europe. Now, that was never a complaint for me. When I traveled to Europe for the first time, my experiences are going to be related to Germany, since that's where I traveled first. And even Belgium and the Netherlands, oh my gosh, like they didn't really have that much ice, or ice at all, right? That came with the drink, but I never thought that they needed to. My mentality, and it was something I was taught when I was little, and maybe my uncle was an eccentric thinker, but I remember being a child with my uncle and we drove through a fast food restaurant. Maybe you guys know of it, Wendy's. And when we went up to the window, you know, we got our meals, but there was something I'll never forget. And it was my uncle asking the cashier to not add any ice to his drink. And he said that's actually a tactic many establishments use so they can preserve resources, right? They fill up your cup to the brim with ice, they pour your drink in afterward, and since ice displaces liquid, you are essentially paying for a quarter of the juice that goes into said cup. The amount of liquid that's in your cup would be the equivalent of like a medium or a small. So that was like a life hack I learned very young. And when I went to Europe, I'm like, oh, they're already all on that. Because like when I got to these restaurants and I got to these different establishments, whenever you ask for any beverage, there's no ice in it, which is fine. That's actually something I appreciated. I'm like, whoa, they're not trying to rip you off. That's awesome. So I think it's weird for Americans to travel to Europe and they're like, where's my ice? I can't have my drink without my ice. Hear me out. And I know a lot of you guys are probably typing this out as I'm saying all this. The drink is already cold. Why would they serve you a warm drink? It makes no sense. They serve you a drink cold and it's expected that you'll drink the drink and eat your food in a timely fashion to where your drink won't be warm or hot. But a lot of people are weird about that. Also, I don't want my drink to be diluted, right? Now, if it's water, that's one thing, but still, I don't want my juices or whatever to be diluted. So why would I add ice to any of that?
If you've been following me, then you know I don't have a freezer. My fridge doesn't have a freezer. I'm gonna show you it, but it's the first time in my life that I have ever had a fridge that did not have a freezer. So my ice cube trays, worthless. And I've been to 40 countries now. I traveled all over Europe. And I remember when I very first came to Europe, I think I was in Poland, and I ordered a drink, just like a soda or whatever. And I said, hey, can you bring me a glass with some ice? The dude brought me a glass with 2 ice cubes. 2 ice cubes? What am I gonna do with 2 ice cubes? And he talking about, oh, is that enough? Yeah, it's enough to piss me off. Where's the rest of the ice?
That's That's what I'm talking about, bruh. You don't need no damn ice cubes in your drink. This dude was crashing out over him being given 2 ice cubes. Bro, you don't need it. You don't need it. Now, I get it. If you're one of them people that takes a long fucking time to drink your goddamn drink, then maybe you do need ice cubes. And you understand that your stuff is gonna be a little diluted by the time you're done drinking your drink. But that's ridiculous, bro. 2 ice cubes is more than enough, man. You don't need to fill that thing up with a crap ton of ice. But I'm telling you, he's not alone in how he thinks. Like, this is a very common complaint. If you go through the internet and look up common complaints Americans have about Europe, one of the #1 complaints is the lack of ice. Again, he's not alone. This is a very common complaint.
Fill the glass up with ice, and then I pour in the drink. That's how that works. Yo, for real, I was like, yo, is there like an ice ration? Do we have to ration ice? Is there not enough water? I mean, give me the ice. I want the ice. And this was a common occurrence. I mean, Czech Republic, Hungary, Lithuania. I was on the lookout, and I was like, okay, hold on.
Another thing I heard about this whole ice debacle, since we're on the topic of ice is not available in Europe. For as much as I like to brag about like Americans loving to walk around with their water jugs, their big, massive gallon water jugs, most of their water jugs are filled with ice. I forgot about that. The water jugs I normally get are very well insulated, so I don't have to worry about that. However, again, it's personal preference. I'm not a health coach or a health professional. I'm just here to tell y'all what I heard. You guys can let me know in the comments down below. Actually, you tell me, why don't you guys offer ice with many of the drinks that you guys have out there in Europe?
Every time I get something, it's got 1 ice cube, 2 ice cubes, or they don't come with ice at all. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I mean, there's nothing I want more when I'm hot and thirsty than a lukewarm cola. Are you kidding me? I never realized how truly blessed I am to have ice when I want to have ice.
Who the hell is serving you a lukewarm cola? Okay, every single establishment I've been to, even the worst establishments I've been to in Europe, were all cold. All of the drinks I got were cold.
Because when you don't have ice, it's crazy. Please tell me, am I just being like a pompous American? Because, I get to my apartment I'm in now, and then no freezer, right? Then I went to Cobblestone, and I was just over someone's house, and I was like, oh man, can I get a glass of ice? Now they did have a fridge with a proper freezer. They had a proper setup there, and they were like, oh no, I don't have any ice. You have a freezer and you don't have ice? And I have to move out of this apartment next week, and the apartment I'm moving into, you guessed it, no freezer. I just want my drinks to be cold. I mean, am I asking too much, Europe? Am I asking too much? And of course you can buy ice at the store, but today is Sunday and all the grocery stores are closed. And then the ones that are open, like the Boone Priest up the street from my house here, it has like a little kiosk type store that's open, and they don't sell ice there. So I have to buy the warm cola, put it in my fridge for whoever knows how long. And when I do buy ice, look at that. It melts because it's not in the freezer.
At first, I thought I understood what the issue was.
The lack of ice.
And now I'm understanding what the issue is.
I just want my drinks to be cold.
This man don't refrigerate his drinks like that for real. Like, brother, your fridge does get cold. I know my fridge gets cold. I'm all the way in South Korea. Your fridge gets cold, my boy. So put your beverages in the fridge. It look like your fridge is empty, so you got space. Just do it. This seems like a non-problem, but again, he's not alone. This is literally one of the top 5 complaints from Americans going to Europe.
Okay, rant over. I need to buy a freezer. Oh my gosh.
All right, so let's get into the comments. Our first comment here is interesting. When I visit the States, I have the reverse problem, and now remember to explicitly ask for no ice, as the ice cubes almost always taste of chlorine, ruining the drink. Oof. See, I forgot about that. We do have a lot of chemicals in our water. I forgot about that. But aside from that, I just want as much of the drink I paid for as possible. So unless it's water, I don't want ice in my stuff at all. The beverages they serve you at any establishment are already going to be cold. So adding ice to it it's not going to make it any more cold. It's just going to prolong how cold it is, and it's going to dilute whatever beverage you had if it's not water. More ice in your glass means less drink. Duh. And that's what I'm saying. Anyways, let's move on to this next post, shall we?
Why is trying to order coffee in Europe the hardest thing ever as an American. I was in London and Spain, and when I was in London, I was like, can I have a coffee with cream, no sugar? And the barista was not getting it. I was like, I'm sorry, I don't understand. I was like, you know, like a regular coffee just with cream. I went back and forth trying to figure it out. And she was like, a drip coffee. And I was like, yes, exactly, a drip coffee. And I stepped aside and I watch her make it, and she's doing everything right. Pouring myself a regular drip coffee. And I watch her try to put the cream on. And I was like, what the hell is she grabbing? This lady literally grabs a bottle of whipped cream.
Did you or did you not ask for cream? Now, hear me out. I understand what she's saying, but as a non-coffee drinker, I do drink coffee, but not regularly. Recently I have, because I've been editing quite a bit. Generally speaking, I don't really drink coffee like that, much less add creamer into my coffee. I'd say within the last year and a half, I actually found out what creamer was, and I was confused because I thought creamer was like actual cream of some sort, like whipping cream or some kind of cream that went into your iced coffee or something. I'm like, huh? That's weird. But it turns out it's just condensed milk. So if you're in another country and let's say you assume they understand what you mean by cream, after the first you should probably explain it to them. There's going to be different terminologies for different things, but in this case, it's very straight up. Like you said,
can I have a coffee with cream, no sugar?
And they gave you cream.
She starts to put whipped cream in my drink. Literally screamed, no, 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 no. She was like, what? You said cream. And I was like, no, I meant milk. I'm so sorry. I'm American. Like when you say cream, that means like milk, blah, blah, blah. We both started bursting out laughing. Anyway, that was one example. Then when I'm flying back from Portugal, sitting in first class, and I asked the flight attendant, hey, may I have a coffee? She was like, yeah, sure. Do you want a shot of espresso or do you want coffee in a bowl? I was like, I'm sorry, in a bowl. And she was like, yeah, you're American. You guys drink coffee in a bowl, right? And I was like, no, girl, no American I know drinks coffee in a bowl. I told her how to make a regular coffee with milk. I ended up getting it and it was good. But like those are just two examples of how difficult it is to like order coffee in Europe. But it was like pulling teeth every single time I said that I wanted a coffee in London, Spain, and Portugal. I had a very, very lovely time, but I'm so happy to be back in the States where I can get a big ass cup of iced coffee, literally the size of my head.
All right, guys, you know what to do. Light up that comment section. Light up that comment section, because I think genuinely the way people get coffee in the United States is entirely different than how you guys would get it in Europe. Okay, very different experience. Again, these are things you should probably look into before you travel. Even though it's not that big of a deal, but it'll avoid situations like this. I do think it's pretty interesting because, again, I could understand the confusion on people in Europe's part, right? They're like, you just asked me for cream, I gave you cream. If you wanted milk, why didn't you ask for fucking milk? Communication's key. Okay. God damn it. But before I lose my mind, let's check out the comments. You asked for cream and were confused when you got cream? This is the bullshit we gotta deal with, okay? You asked me for cream, I delivered, and you complain. You got the same people that are making these types of videos turning around and talking about how bad European customer service is. God damn it. Next comment. Why don't you just call milk milk? Yeah, that's the same fucking point I was trying to make. Why don't you just call it milk? Anyways, next post. Listen. This first slide is very interesting. 29 days of paid vacation is absolutely insane. I genuinely did not realize how much of a problem this was until I saw a wave, a ginormous wave of confusion between Americans and Europeans. They're like, wait a minute, how are you always on vacation? Like Americans would say this to Europeans. How are you guys always on vacation? You guys are always kicking back and relaxing. When do you actually work? And then on the flip side, Europeans to Americans would be like, you guys are always working. How do you guys claim you have friends and you can barely see them? How do you guys claim to have relationships with your family and stuff and you can't even see them? It's like you live and breathe and eat work. For what? Like, where's the money going? Can you enjoy the money that you earn or not? Because we can. That's crazy. I'm not gonna hold you. If you take more than a couple days of sick leave, especially in today's day and age in America, you're gonna get fired. Let's get into this. When I first traveled to I ate so much. Now, I'm a big guy, right? For my European peoples, I am 192 centimeters and I'm about 121 kg. So I'm a big ass dude, you feel me? Now, I was heavier than that when I went to Germany for my first time. I was like pushing like 126, 127 kg. However, I remember when I traveled to Germany, I ate probably more than I did usually for the first week, right? And I lost 7 kilograms, 7 kilos in 1 week. Eating, stuffing my face stupid, eating junk food, drinking beer. Guess what? 3 things I noticed immediately. I had 0 bloating when I ate the food over there. I don't have any skin issues as is, but my skin was glowing out there. I don't know how. And I lost a bunch of weight. Damn near 14, 15 pounds in 1 week eating as much as I was eating because my body was just not used to having food that was that good for me. You know, the United States, like, oh my gosh, we have so many different chemicals and things in our food. It's wild. This is another point that I wanted to get into as well. I'll just touch on this briefly. Like I mentioned previously, just like a few minutes ago, the same food that I was eating, the junk food in Europe that contributed to my weight loss, was the same food that I would eat and I didn't feel bad. I was expecting my stomach to go acrobatic on, do backflips, hit splits, all kind of craziness. No, not at all. In fact, my stomach felt fine. When I first heard about traveling around Europe, it did not compute for me. How are these countries in Europe so close? But if you make the analogy, if the United States and Europe were side by side, it'd be the equivalent of you being able to travel from New York to California. Now, granted, traveling from New York to California gonna cost you a lot of fucking money. That shit gonna cost you probably $700-800 for a plane ticket. But in the same breath, in Europe, pretty much anywhere, it's maybe a couple $100, maybe like 50 to a couple $100. I haven't heard anybody say it was expensive to travel from any part of Europe to another part of Europe, which is very interesting when you think about it. And I was like, dang, it's really like that? I need to live in Europe for a little bit. Now that we've gotten through all of that, let's go ahead and take a look at our comments. I'm thinking of doing the reverse of this, things that shook me after moving back to the States. And I'm telling you right now, we would love to see it. I think a recent thing I've been indulging in, right, within the last like 5-6 months are Americans that travel abroad. It could be anywhere and then travel back to the United States and they make videos on reverse culture shocks. To me, that is like peak entertainment because the mind shift that they go through is insane. And it's almost like the exact same awakening that everybody gets when they leave the United States and they come back. Now, no hate to the United States, but there's a lot more to the world than the United States. And the United States right now is kind of cooked. There's a lot going on and we're like, come on, man. But seeing the world for what it is, very, very vast, so many different cultures, so many different perspectives and ways of life. It will change you. It will literally change you as a person if you indulge in traveling. Issues that you think are massive issues are non-issues. You become less full of yourself for sure because you have to be mindful of how you behave and you'll just figure out that you have to be mindful. Like initially, you know, some people may ignore your behavior, but if you travel enough, you'll find that you will be very much inconvenienced if you continue behaving in a way that is disrespectful to the locals. And especially if you're not aware of your surroundings and whatnot. I'll put it this way, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments down below, but I'm pretty sure you guys can tell the difference between an American that is well-traveled and an American that's not. Two entirely different mindsets. I'm very curious to hear you guys' stories or takes on that in the comments down below. The weight loss is so real. Similar situation here in the Netherlands. I'm telling you, hey, for my Americans watching this video, if you're trying to lose that weight, you've been struggling to lose that like that little like 20 to 50 pounds, you need to take your goofy butt on over to Europe. You know what I'm saying? You can eat whatever you want, do whatever you want, and you will lose weight. Because I promise you, they have a way more active lifestyle out there than we do in the United States based on how everything is structured. So I'm telling you, that's the way to go. That's the way, and you'll feel so much better. There was a video I saw a while ago of this lady that traveled to Europe, and not only did she lose weight, but she said her acne was completely eradicated, her bloating was completely gone, and she genuinely felt incredible. But when she traveled back to the States, she made another video on the reverse culture shock she experienced, and she realized that the bloating she was experiencing and the acne that returned and the hormonal imbalances and stuff like that, whatever, had everything to do with the food she was eating in the United States versus the food she was eating in Europe. So that's a very real thing. I don't think people understand that until they get to experience it firsthand. In fact, I have an interesting question for my European viewers watching this right now. Have you traveled to the United States? And I know we got some good food out there. We do have some delicious food. It might not be the healthiest, but we got some good food out there. What was your body's reaction to the food that we had in the United States? Let me know in the comments down below. Any kind of food, dessert, or any other food type in America if you've traveled out to the United States before. Yep, this is a very true statement. In this post, I actually made a video that you guys have probably seen a few weeks ago. And there was a CEO of a company that this lady was applying to, and he was saying that if you want to excel in the company and have even a micro shot at being promoted, time off is not gonna be a thing at all. Like, bare minimum, you should be working 40 hours a week, but everybody works like 50 to 80 hours a week. And I'm like, huh? And time off for that company was a sign of laziness. That's actually a very common mentality in a lot of corporate America. That is a thing. Not sure how often you guys have heard of that, but yeah, time off. If you take time off, people are gonna look at you like you're a slacker. And it's very unfortunate. This is a very interesting observation I've heard a few times, and I think it's interesting because I've heard mixed opinions on this. But for the most part, this is very accurate. Grind set is the mindset. And America, we are all about ourselves. We're very individualistic. That is very true. The way that the system is set up is everybody has to grind to get their piece, right? You have to grind to provide for your family, friends, whatever. But then the companies that you're working under to provide, right, milk the hell out of you. I've never resonated with the term working like a dog until I got into the workforce. And I'm like, oh my God, I think I understand what they're talking about. It is very interesting. Very, very, very interesting. And because of that, you do see a larger amount of Americans that are out of touch with their families, out of touch with their friends the older they get, because of course they are acquiring more jobs, they're accelerating in their work and whatnot. And because they're accelerating in their work, they have to work more, they have to work longer hours. That's more time away from their families and friends. And it is unfortunate. Yeah, America's in turmoil when it comes to this topic, man. We have a lot of people in the United States, a lot of politicians that preach about the family values, the value of, you know, raising a family, having as many kids as possible, no matter what, right? And yet the same people in power in the government are not offering any aid for the people who are having these children and these families and whatnot. It's literally a liability to have a family in this day and age, with the economy being the way it is, the job opportunities being what they are right now currently, and the cost of everything right now in the United States alone. It is not worth it to have a family. So let's get into these comments. This first comment here is real as fuck, as it says, we can't see our friends during the week because we're working 11-hour days. That is the reality we live in. I will say, I did watch a clip from Arnold Schwarzenegger, and he made a very good point. Like, America has a lot of really cool things about it, right? One of the biggest things I always preach is, despite all of our problems, right? All of our issues. We have a bunch of issues in America, but still, even I would even venture to say to this day, with what's happening, it still is a place where people can build themselves an incredible amount of wealth from nothing. From nothing. If you play your cards the right way, you absolutely can. And it's interesting. It's very interesting. Now, we make shit tons of mistakes, and there are a lot of things we have not gotten right, but I do think that that is one thing I can say to this day that still remains to be true. But this next comment, oh, sorry about that. Camera died, so small time skip there. But our comment here says, as French, I would feel so empty without the emotional intimacy I share with my friends. I can't imagine my life without it. And I definitely can understand that sentiment. But for some reason, I guess America's society is designed to butcher and destroy close relationships. Unless you've found a very unique balance where you're able to work at a point where it's not too overwhelming, which is very privileged and damn near impossible. You can balance your family life to some degree. Next post. Now, this is something I can get behind. For those that don't know, preferably, I definitely do like wine over every other type of remote alcoholic beverage. I just like the way it tastes. And so, all I needed was a reason to have it for breakfast. Oh my goodness. Yummy, yum, yum. I did not know that there were certain wines you can pair with breakfast, but come to think of it, there are wines you can pair with literally every meal and different types of foods and whatnot. So for my wine drinkers in the comment section, what is your favorite wine and why? Let me know in the comments down below. I favor dessert wine right now, but I also love dry red wine. Let me know. I would love to hear what you guys' tastes are so I can go ahead and expand my palate. As we've mentioned before, the siestas in Italy are insane. 1 to 3 p.m. is exactly what I was told. Very interesting. What's that life like for my peoples that live in Italy? Like, what do you do in that time period? Do you take a nap? Do you genuinely go and talk to family? Like, what do you do? Okay, this is real different because Germany is the complete opposite of Italy when it comes to this theory right here. I think Germany, people want you to get to where you're trying to get to in a hurry for the most part. Italy seems like the other end of the spectrum of chill. Like everybody's like relax, lay back, chillax, don't do too much. Just genuinely enjoy your surroundings and don't move too much. I walk very fast in general, but I didn't think I'd be judged for it. Another interesting take. I never even thought to look at it that way. Again, this is another ideology where you can just sit and genuinely enjoy your surroundings, and I'm here for it. So this is my first time ever hearing about colostrum. I don't even know what that is, but I guess I'm gonna start taking that. Miracle Moo. How do y'all feel about that? All right, this last one right here is interesting. I did not know this. I have freshly entered the coffee scene. I didn't know cappuccinos were breakfast coffees. I didn't know what the difference between a cappuccino or Americano was. I know what the difference between an espresso and them things are, but I don't know. But let's go ahead and take a look at these comments. There is no way to ethically collect colostrum, by the way. Would not recommend drinking it. All colostrum that is collected directly contributes to animal cruelty. Interesting comment. 12 a.m. So yeah, that comment was interesting. She said if you order a coffee after 12 a.m. then you'll get some crazy stares. If you order a cappuccino after 12 a.m. I think she meant 12 p.m. But still, either way, is that really a thing in Italy? If you order a cappuccino after 12 p.m. people look at you weird? I could see that being a thing, but I didn't know that.
And I said, just go get a vasectomy. Anyway, so we're going going around the islands on that tour, you know, the tour, and we missed the cruise by 5 minutes. Oh, there you are. Hey, you guys got any espresso martinis?
Nothing really needs to be said about this one besides the fact that we are very entertaining. I'm a loud individual. I have been very loud in public before, and I'm pretty sure I put on a masterpiece of a performance in front of a lot of people at some point in time. I've become very, very, very aware of my volume since then because I do know that people are listening and it is very interesting. Also, to add to that, I also find it very interesting being here in Korea. Now, for those that are new to my channel, a large portion of what you'll see on my channel is me obsessing over Germany. I love Germany, love the country. I'm trying to learn how to speak German a lot better than I can now. I understand it very well, and that leads me into a tiny story time. I went to an aquarium here in Korea, and there were some German tourists, and I was like, you know, sitting down admiring like the, you know, fish and whatnot, and they were talking about like a couple that was on the other side of me, and I was like, oh my gosh. It was kind of weird being able to understand everything they were saying, but they were like playfully cracking jokes. They weren't really being mean, and in my head the entire time I was like, whoa, this is like a new special ability. Like I can hear German and English and understand it. That's insane to me. But I'm in Korea, so I should be learning more Korean. This is like up there on the top of the list of things that trigger Americans, man. Paying for water, that had me all the way messed up. Now I heard about it before I went to Germany, but what I'm hearing unanimously from you guys is you don't have to pay for tap water, but sparkling water is a standard in Europe. It feels like it's a standard. So you do have to pay for water, meaning sparkling water. Now you have to specifically request tap water. That's the difference between Europe and the United States. You can eat it with your hands, okay? Especially for how thin the pizza is in Italy. All right, it is thin. I think that's just meant to be a hand food. I always think it's so cursed when I see people eat pizza with a fork and knife. Like,
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
okay, I can get with this. The water bottle with the caps stuck on was kind of annoying, but it's like a very, very minor inconvenience. So I didn't really think it was that big of a deal. But I think that was a recent change within the last, like, what, 4 or 5 years? I do think this is very dependent on where you're at in Europe. Small portion sizes, that was not what I experienced in Germany. Oh, yes.
Oh my God. I could cry. This is so good. This is so good. This is so good. The onions, the crunchiness of like the flakes and stuff on top, and then the whatever the garnish is in here, fire. And the cheese, bro, oh, the cheese.
Wasn't what I experienced in the Netherlands, and definitely was not what I experienced in Belgium. So now, are the portion sizes smaller than America? Again, that just depends on where you eat at, because for the most part, I felt like I got a lot of food for what I paid. Oh my God, bro. When are we gonna let this no ice thing go, bro? I beat that into the ground. No ice, come on, we gonna have to let that one go. Now, the non-refrigerated eggs, that was something that never really bothered me. I never questioned it, but the way that the eggs are pasteurized or the lack thereof has everything to do with how they turn out. And I'm all for the eggs not being refrigerated. I just like them being cold I'm like a creature of habit. Even though when I get my eggs now, they're not refrigerated, I buy them and they're not refrigerated, and the first place I put them is in the fridge, mainly to save space. I don't think this is a problem. I think in America we do the same thing, but instead of wine, it's usually a beer. Rocky roads definitely messed me up a little bit, not gonna lie. I walked a bunch in Germany. Cobblestone was everywhere. My feet hurt a lot, but I was also getting like 30,000 to 60,000 steps in every single day. The fuck do you mean warm beer? Okay, that was a little different too. Elevators are hit or miss in Europe from what I've seen. Like, some buildings will have them, most places don't really. You'll have escalators in malls, but then in apartment buildings, it's stairs. Actually, every single apartment building that had multiple floors only had stairs. Now, out of, let's say, there were a bunch of friends I wanted to visit that lived in apartment buildings. So let's say if I visited 30 different apartments, there were probably 2 apartments that had elevators. This one was interesting too, not having a dryer. Now, I understand why Europeans look fresher than most Americans, because your stuff doesn't look dingy and faded and whatnot. When you dry your clothes, you preserve the colors and the material of your laundry. Unfortunately, I damage my clothes and I dry them all the time with a dryer. This one is based. Okay, every American going over to Europe has encountered this at least once. The customer is not always right. And in America, you're trained to understand that the customer is always right. In Europe, everybody gets paid a good wage. So don't you think for a split second that you can talk to the people that work at any establishment crazy. This is cool. I actually do like this a lot. Only being able to get fresh produce that's in season, I'm in full support of that. Now this, I did not know. Cafes don't have to-go coffee? Where? Every place I've been to in Europe had to-go coffee. Typically though, if you're going to a cafe, you want to sit down and enjoy your coffee. All right, this one is interesting. Y'all be smoking like it's the 50s, okay? I saw damn near, okay, Korea, I understand. There's a pollution problem here. If you travel around and you see a gray haze over everything, it's because pollution that is being produced in Korea and the yellow dust coming from China combined, it makes for very unhealthy levels of pollution. But in Germany, although the air is very clean, in Europe in general, the air is very clean. Yeah, y'all smoke like it's the 1950s out there. I mean, half the people, you know, just use the vapes, which is cool. But then a lot of you guys just prefer classic cigarettes or cigars. And I'm like, God dang. Okay, the big open windows, you do have those in the United States with safety features because we're dumb. Okay, I don't understand how neutral colors would trigger Americans. I think you guys are used to seeing us wearing bright, poppy, wild colors, which is what I do for sure. But neutral colors to me just screams very professional, very well kept, and that's great. This one had me messed up a little bit. You guys not using paper napkins, you guys use cloth. I'm like, oh my God. Like, you don't just throw your napkins away when you're done. You keep them because they're cloth. Oh Lord. Hey, look, one thing I did love about Europe, to this day, is the simple menus. I love it. You don't have to have 1,000 options. I actually don't like the fact that a lot of menus in America, we have too many options. Like, pick a specialty and stick to it. All right, so let's get to these comments. Okay, I'm from Europe, not the UK, and some of these things I personally don't like, or we don't do here either. And that's what I was thinking, because I'm like, there's no way that all of these apply to every European country. I mean, all of them apply to some of the European countries, but not every one of them, right? So which ones apply to where you're from and which ones are not applicable? And which one of these things that give Americans the ick also give you the ick as well? I would love to know, because maybe there's some things that are pretty valid for criticism. Like, yeah, that isn't really something we vibe with too much. Warm beer, question mark? Yeah, I was wondering that too. Who the fuck serves warm beer in Europe? Like, I don't know any place in Europe that would do that. That's enough of us looking at these confused Americans out here. You guys let me know what other diabolical things Americans have done or said to you guys out there in Europe, and also how you guys can spot us out in Europe for our first times almost immediately.